I do think we are muted.
Okay. Darn it. Johnny, you're muted too here.
There we go.
We're good.
Yeah.
We're good with sound? Okay. Listen, we had the new shiny overlay. Everything was going so well. It was very exciting, but now we have sound. Look at us. We did it. All right, gang. Let's go right from the top here. Welcome to Long Toss episode 305. It's perfect. I'm always better the second time around. Look at how smooth this is going now. Very excited to be joined by our panel of guests. And oh boy, do we have lots to talk about after the Blue Jays score a 2024 record amount of runs for this team, 11, and still somehow find a way to lose. It was ugly. We're going to get into it. There is an echo, I guess. We are going to try and figure that out as we go here, folks. But okay, now everyone's saying the sound is good. Anyways, let's start with our regular, the lady who is here week in and week out, Baseball Jen. Thank you for joining us. This team is going to give us lots to talk about, whether we want to or not, eh?
Yes, absolutely. It's never lacking in entertainment value, I suppose, at this point. But self-fulfilling prophecy. They go out there and they find a way to lose, even when they have their best offensive game, which has been the bane of their existence all season. They still manage to find a way to lose. So I'm gonna get shouty.
Yeah. And I think that's needed. I mean, this is a Blue Jays bullpen that ranks 28th in Major League Baseball with a 5.01 ERA. And this team really did bet on positive regression from the players that they needed to see it from, internal improvements. And that also came along with betting on the bullpen and the starting rotation, repeating what they did last year. Let's go to our other regular here, Joel LaFlamme. Hey, Commie on TikTok. How you doing, buddy? It's always good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, tough week. This is supposed to be the soft underbelly of the schedule where we're just supposed to cruise to the. I had sent you this text where it was like, oh, not only are we a bad AL East team, but we're a mediocre AL Central team. And it's just like that's kind of that's an interesting realization that we're not just the bottom of here. We're probably don't compete in the Central either. So.
And that's the first time that we have had to deal with that reality in years here, where we would actually mock the AL Central and kind of dance on their graves a little bit. And now here we are having our ass handed to us by these middle of the road AL Central teams. Very excited to have with us for the first time making their inaugural Long Toss appearances. Adam and Nick of Blue Jays Today. Thanks so much for stopping by, gentlemen. Good to see you.
Thank you, Scott. It's a pleasure, man.
Nick, you watched the whole thing here, the whole game.
Oh yeah, well we were live doing our watch along for it. Had the clown noses ready to go and everything. Our rule now is when we get down by 5, that's when they come on. Doesn't seem fair to put them on before that. So they were on and off all game long. And then we really did we truly bought into the fact that they were off for good. After that Varsho home run, holy mother of God, I thought we were going to get noise complained just horrifically, literally our neighbors had the right to do so if they so wanted to.
Loud.
It was loud and it was obnoxious, but you know what? The season that we've been on, it was also warranted, I think. And then I think you right off the top of this episode, you said gut punch. The gut punch that we and you folks and everybody watching right now felt when Matt Vierling for the second time of the game goes yard and you see Jordan Romano effectively fall into himself. That was a universal feeling for all Jays fans. So yeah, I watched it and I really wish I hadn't.
Disa in chat sums it up beautifully. emotional roller coaster. It was just a really difficult game to watch. And obviously, we're going to dive into the ins and outs of this series. We're going to talk George Springer and just listen. I don't want to throw this comparison out lightly, but I am starting to worry that we are dealing with a Chris Davis level of contract uselessness here. And I really hope that I'm being premature. And obviously, we'll go around the horn and see how everyone feels here. You say Kikuchi with a rough start today, but you know what? And I tweeted it, and I really do feel like putting your starters in a position to be perfect every single game is a horrible way to baseball. It's just like a very horrible way to baseball. And we're going to get into that. We're going to talk the Mariners a little bit here. And speaking of the Mariners and emotional roller coasters, Juan Forno of the walk-off Mariners, you kind of went through the exact opposite experience that we did this afternoon, a roller coaster ride with your Mariners, but they actually wound up pulling it out.
Yeah, it was a little bit surprising. I know I was in the text messages bitching and complaining when they went down 5-4, but they persisted, and I think they're showing why they have the potential to be a playoff team this year. And it's always nice to be on the other side of those kinds of games. It wasn't like that all week, that's for sure. We lost 2-3 to Washington and then split with the Yankees, but it's good to end the week on a high note and come to these therapy chats in a good mood.
And that's really what Long Toss has become, is therapy. And to everyone in the chat, thanks for joining us. Feel free to hit that like button, subscribe if you have not subscribed. We are going to get to as many folks in the chat as we possibly can. And we are going to start just with a regular here on the show. Andrew McLeod says over under on the next time we hear from Ross Atkins. July 1st weekend, the Saturday during NHL free agency, which would be a very Ross Atkins move. I'll throw to you, Jen, to kind of get us going on this series, where we're at as an organization, and just even touching on what Andrew said about Ross Atkins, and if we're going to hear from him at all.
That's a great question. He's not somebody who gets out there and addresses the media very often. And when he does, he really doesn't have anything to say. And he got absolutely roasted for his comments a week ago. Is there a point to him saying anything unless it is to announce a firing or to announce a trade or to announce calling up some of the guys from Buffalo? Is there any point in him saying anything whatsoever right now?
I don't know if there is, although I do keep thinking back to his last press conference and the fact that he brought up that we are getting very close to something needing to be done. And of course, what he was really alluding to was some call-ups from the Bisons and filling some of these spots that just aren't producing right now. There are some names that I don't know what you do with them, right? Kevin Biggio, Justin Turner, you just got to hope he turns it around, I think. Joel, when you look at this team, do you think they need to infuse some youth, try something different? I mean, we are getting into desperate territory. I don't think that we can expect Aroldis Martinez or Spencer Horwitz to be the saviors of this organization, but are we almost at the point where you got to start seeing what they have in AAA to make some decisions as the deadline approaches?
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I want to see anybody who's hot for this lineup right now, but we're really beyond everything in a situation where we don't even know what our lineup looks like. We don't even know who's who right now. We're in this flux moment of being so locked to a singular lineup for so long, and then that's falling apart. So we need to find out who's our leadoff guy, who's hitting two. Is this Vladdy's hitting? Bo's hitting again. How do we construct this thing all of a sudden with them being shifted around? How do we reconstruct it so we know how to consistently, because to be able to go out and put up 11 runs, but then the day before is 0, right? We're in this place of, and even 11 doesn't even carry you for a win. So it's a place where I want. What do you do? Who do you bring in at this moment? It's the say one thing, do another attitude from Atkins, where, hey, we're looking for another bat to bring in to bolster this thing. We still got a chance. Hey, do you remember the Nationals where they were in 2019? And those kind of things that you hear, and you're just, I don't want to hear that shit. And then you find out that the news around baseball is that they're shopping Bo and Vladdy and they're looking for offers. So it's like, say one thing, do another. The next time I hope I hear from Ross Atkins is at Burger King or making an order and he's behind the till, to be completely honest. So.
Adam, you boys at Blue Jays today have a pretty good pulse on the feeling of the fan base. I mean, you guys have the live chats going pretty regularly. And Vladdy has been an interesting topic this season because we're watching this fan base cool on him. And then also at the same time, it's the old meme, right? Of we're out and then we're so fucking back. So when you think of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. personally, and forget about where the fan base is at, if for some reason he's prepared to stay in Toronto, do you think that's the right move? Do you think this is a guy who's still worthy to be built around, and that if there is such a thing as like a retool or rebuild going on, that Vladdy should still really, truly at 25 years old be part of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think at this point, it's we got to wait and see, because just like Joel was saying, we don't even have an identity of this team. Is Vladdy the guy that you're going to have the team built around? We don't know yet. Yeah, I mean, the month of May, the dude's hitting over 400. That's incredible. Best month he's had since 2021, right? So I think at this point, you're still waiting and seeing. You got to see another month. You need to see, do we trade guys away? Do we call up the young guys from AAA? And then are they doing well? If Vladdy doesn't have a supporting cast really around him, and he's the only one performing, then, well, I don't know. Like, do you trade him off and then begin the rebuild? It's going to be one of those things where I don't think you're going to really have an answer until maybe even next year. Maybe it's the deadline of next year, because you really got to see where are we as a team, and everything kind of feels all over the place. Me personally, I'm always still going to be on the train of, look, this guy's still young. He's 25 years old. He's still got that potential. Let me wait a little bit longer. Yes, he's gone through some cold streaks, but now we're seeing the ups. Let's just wait and see. And if he is down, look, we don't need to trade him. I'm okay if we just walk away. Sure, you'll lose value, but it's one of those risks where we don't know where the team's going to be in a year from now. So it's not the most sexiest answer, but it's one of those ones I think you got to be cautious. And you got to wait and see.
I kind of think about Guerrero's situation and where the Toronto Blue Jays are right now, similarly to where Cleveland was a couple of years ago when they had Frankie Lindor, they had Jose Ramirez. They were good, and then it was, this isn't working anymore. We got to decide where this team's going. Lindor goes, they keep Ramirez. They go into this dark period, which it kind of looks like we're doing right now. And now it seemingly looks like, anyways, they're getting to the other side of it, and I would hope that if the Toronto Blue Jays did decide to hold on to Guerrero and kind of say to themselves, what, we do believe in him, and we think that this is still a player that is worthy of being here long-term and building around, then that would be the trajectory that this organization goes in. But there is so many missing pieces right now that we just don't have, that it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and how you are going to navigate and create that. The one thing I will say for sure is, regardless of what you decide to do, extend Vlad, trade Vlad, let him go, let him whatever, I don't want Ross Atkins being the one to make the call on that. I would like there to be somebody else with a different vision doing it, and whatever that individual decides, okay, I'm okay with it. But as long as we're going in a different direction than what we're doing right now, because clearly the philosophy, it's not working.
Of run prevention.
And Nick, you're not alone. The chat agrees 100% with what you're saying on Atkins, that we do need a new voice at the helm of this thing. Whatever direction this team winds up choosing to go, Ross Atkins, I don't think, is the guy to do it. As for Vladdy, Mark Draber pipes up. He says, I still want to lock Vladdy up. I see him having a David Ortiz type career. New Brunswick, Canada guy says Vladdy has no help after him, really. Losing Simeon and Teo and Lourdes was too much. And honestly, that is a problem with this team because everyone really loves to bring up how Vladdy doesn't hit home runs, right? You can give his OPS, you can give his on-base percentage, you can give his batting average the last 30 games, which honestly, eye-popping stuff. But what it doesn't have is the thump that everyone had come to fall for when it comes to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and expect, really. But think about where Vladdy would be on the depth charts of any other team that had a big time home run hitter behind him, right? And that, like, yeah, there is still massive value in Vladimir Guerrero Jr. just doing what he's doing. And I'm going to go to you here, Juan, because I think the outside perspective is a really good one to look at with Vladdy because, I mean, the Seattle Mariners, buddy, they could use some offense. And I know that Dipoto is a guy who doesn't, very much like Atkins, believe in windows. But the Mariners are in an interesting position here because very similar to where the Blue Jays were at last year or in 2022, it feels like now's the time for them to start locking up that core and for them to make some big decisions and maybe push in a little bit. Vladdy is a guy who would look good on the Seattle Mariners.
You're gonna get no arguments from me in terms of bringing Vladdy over to the West Coast. Yeah, this is a kid like you guys said, is 25 years old. He's shown the propensity to be, MVP caliber offense. He's won a Gold Glove. It's a complicated thing for a team like Seattle who doesn't want to spend all that money on guys, and it was clear when they went and locked up Castillo, and it was clear when they went up and locked up Julio. They're very, very team-friendly contracts in terms of the skill that those two players have. And, I don't think Vladdy's going to be giving out any discounts. So it makes it a little bit tricky, a year and a half of service. If you're all in, then go for it, and that's good. But I think right now the Mariners organization is really worried about locking up their young, talented pitching staff. And are saving money for that exact reason. I'd love to see us go all in and go get a guy like Vladdy. I do think that he's the type of guy that can transcend an offense. Like you guys say, he's hitting 400 this month, and I mean, the power numbers might not be there like you want them to, but 400 is 400. You're gonna take that every day of the week, and 400 is not necessarily cold in terms of average, but it's cold in terms of power. And if your cold streak or your disappointing season is hitting 400 in a month, the Mariners will take that every day of the week because I think our best player is hitting like 240 right now. So,
and I mean, this is obviously dreaming high in the sky for Mariner fans. I don't think that this is the type of deal that Dipoto would pull the trigger on, right? I mean, Vladdy's only got a year and a half of control, and the Mariners just aren't going to spend the money to lock him up. We watched them ship off Robbie Ray because he had such a heavy price tag to him. Jen, let's get into George Springer a little bit here because one of the major problems with this team is the roster construction, in my opinion, and it's just there isn't a legitimate leadoff hitter on this team. I love Davis Schneider, and I love what he's done at the top of the order in the position that he's been put in. I think he just looks far more like a number 5 hitter in this lineup, but you kind of got to roll with what you got to roll. And this is a big question and a heavy question, and I hope that this is a question that at the end of the season, we can all kind of be like, remember when Scott suggested that George Springer might be completely washed up? What a ridiculous statement by a man who knows nothing about baseball. But George Springer that contract is starting to look hefty. He's still owed $25 million a year this season, next season, and the season after that. Is he almost at the point right now where you're looking for reasons to get him out of the lineup?
Like a Phantom IL stint? Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with him aside from age-related regression and injury history and lack of trash cans. I really don't know where to put the weight But he's late on everything, right? The guy cannot catch up to a fastball anymore. And he really is just dead weight no matter where you put him in the lineup. I think he's like dead last, nearly dead last in OPS in the league. You know, what do you do with that? And so, you know, moving him out of the leadoff spot was certainly a start, but he's still, you know, a dead spot in the lineup no matter where they put him. So, yeah, I think if you could Phantom IL him, you absolutely do that. But I don't really know where they go from here. Like, as you said, he's still owed all of this money. You cannot trade that contract unless you're eating most of the money. You know, maybe he's a good guy to have around in terms of veteran presence if you rebuild. I don't know. Like, knowing full well that the team isn't going to be on a winning trajectory, maybe he's fine to have just to, you know, show the young guys the ropes. But beyond that, I honestly do not know what you do with him. And there's so many other guys in the lineup who you also don't know what to do with them. What do you do with Justin Turner right now? I know he's only a 1-year contract, but what do you do with him, right? What do you do with Vogelbach? What do you do with these guys? This goes back to the point about Vlad, right? And I've been incredibly difficult on Vlad, right? I've really raked him over the coals over the last year. The guy is playing phenomenally well, with the exception of not hitting home runs, but maybe that's okay, right? He's otherwise doing something that nobody else on this team can actually do. And look what they built around him, right? Like, back to the question of should they, sign him long term and try to build around him. They've tried to build around him. Look what they did with him. You know, they traded a great offensive lineup for this shit. Where do you go from here? How do you now build around him? And even if you're going to, as we've all said, it can't possibly be Ross Atkins who makes those decisions, you know? And so if they can't put together a better team than this around him, they're about to waste the best years of Vlad and Bo, the two supposed franchise players. You know, the negligence around this team and the roster construction, having those two as your so-called corner pieces, is just unbelievable. So if they can't build better around him, then trade him and get what you can.
Jen, I needed this so bad. I just needed you yelling about this so bad. I mean, to speak to your point there, Scott Carter spoke up in chat. George Springer is 154th out of 156 qualified batters when it comes to OPS.
Yep. Sounds right.
I mean, it is disgusting, the numbers that he is putting up. Joel, is Springer salvageable? And what is your opinion on Vladdy long-term with this org?
Yeah, that's interesting stuff. See, Springer, which is really, really tough, is he brought in to be that World Series piece, that World Series MVP is going to perform in the postseason. And the cost of him isn't just that he's a Chris Davis contract, but what ended up getting shipped out of town for him to be able to play right field. Okay. And this is an understanding of the center field position through the history of the game. This is Ken Griffey Jr., this is Willie Mays, this is Joe DiMaggio, this is Mickey Mantle. This is the history of the game at this position. And what happens when you hit 30, you ain't got the legs to play that spot anymore. It just happens. It's just the case of the position. So for you to invest $150 million on an already injury-prone center fielder, hoping that his 30s will magically be some sort of, injury renaissance where he's not getting hurt, is just
which
ridiculous.
We see in baseball all the time.
No,
Joel.
it just don't. This does not exist. You can't name this player as at 32 he really found himself at center field and played out his days there. No, it's not a position to go out to pasture for. And to think we spend what, 150 for Springer. And the idea is that we were not able to re-sign Lourdes or Teo. I've heard that all the time. We're not going to be able to re-sign these guys. And I just shook my head all the time. Like, why? Why? Teo has, if you haven't seen Jose Batista's career, you see Jose Batista light in Teo. Whatever, he's gonna, some balls are gonna go through him. They're gonna go through him. I don't care about corner outfielders and balls going through their legs. I never have. I care about the 3-run homer that plays a hell of a lot more. The guy who's got 37 RBIs right now. That plays. I don't care about the ball that goes through his legs every 2 months, and we dwell on that. That doesn't mean anything. Lourdes literally has an older brother that is a direct replica of how he plays that played to 40. That guy, Lourdes, is going to be a competitive baseball player till 40. Why? Because Yuli was. And Lourdes is better than Yuli. So it was sitting there and seeing these two players get shipped out for Springer so that we could take this defensive approach when putting zeros on the board doesn't win you a game. Putting an 8 on the board does.
And I think, yeah, like, I mean, this is the thing, right? Is that when you rely on defense and pitching, things need to go perfect. The Seattle Mariners are pulling it off. We'll throw to you here, Juan, and just like, we'll talk really quickly about the fact that the Mariners, I mean, I'm in a Mariners group chat because I'm trying to learn more about the team as so that I can talk Mariners when I do the Mariner walk-off Mariners. But their complaints are very, very similar to Blue Jays' complaints in 2023. And it's just like, yeah, it's all working out for you. But is there a flaw in the construction of a team that needs to be perfect when it comes to the defensive end of the game and to pitching? Are you putting too many eggs in one basket? And this doesn't necessarily need to be a Mariners question, Juan. You can actually absolutely comment on the Jays here, who is proof right now, I think, that maybe this is a dangerous rope to walk. But where do you go as a defensive team? Because the Jays kind of back themselves into a corner.
Yeah, I think like, and you know, when the good old days of Jose Bautista and EE, you know, the offense was exciting and you guys didn't lose much time transitioning from those two guys to Blow and Vladdy as rookies. And so the excitement around the Blue Jays franchise was really that high-powered offense, to the point where they felt like they could regress in that category, scale back and focus on defense, and that would put them over the hump. And I think it was just a very, very silly mentality to go that route when you had, you know, arguably the best offense in the MLB. And you know, it goes to chemistry. You know, I watched the Blue Jays today and it doesn't seem like they're having fun. And I get it, losing's not fun, but it's a far cry from the Vladdy, Teo, Lourdes days where they were having the best time of their lives, playing ball, you know, and it seemed like they loved what they were doing. To your point, Scott, in terms of like rolling around defense and pitching, you do have to be perfect, man. It's tough, you know, to look up at the scoreboard and see that you're down 3-1 and know that you don't have a good chance of winning that game. And it's the 6th inning, only down by 2. That's tough. And it puts a lot of pressure on the arms, and it's okay at the start of the season, but as you know, you get into July and August and the season starts to get long and you get tired, it leaves very, very, very little room for error. And I don't love going about it that route. Sometimes, you know, that's just the way it crumbles, and those are the options you have within your roster and your organization. But I think, and I mean, you guys have a pretty important 4-week stretch here where I think it's either going to be get back in this or blow it up completely. I don't think there's middle ground for the Blue Jays right now. And honestly, if the Mariners were in a different division in the American League, I think we'd probably be in a similar situation, you know, to have 31 quality starts this season and have 29 wins is a crazy stat to me. You know, I know you're not going to win all quality starts, but you're obviously not winning games where you don't get a quality start at all either, right? So, you know, luckily Houston and Texas are a little bit weak this year, whether it's injury or regression or whatever. But yeah, Toronto's going down an important four-week stretch, and Vladdy can't do it by himself. You know, somebody's got to step up. I know Bo's been playing and hitting a lot better. It's going to take more than that. The pitchers got to keep doing what they're doing, and they got to find some help in the bullpen, whether that's, you know, claiming some DFA relief pitchers, you know, going and trying to sign a guy off a veteran contract that's in AAA. Whatever the case may be, you guys got to improve that pen. Giving up 14 runs when your starters have one of the best team ERAs in the league just can't happen. So something's got to be done, and it doesn't seem like they're pulling the right strings right now. And much to everybody's point, Ross Atkins isn't the guy. He took a promising roster and went backwards with it. So, some things have to change, and I think it starts with Atkins.
I would have to agree with that. Is Atkins, and this is the thing, right? And I think this is why he was given so much rope, is that Atkins did build a solid base for this team, and then the pendulum swung way too far the other way. And I mean, Joel speaks of it all the time, right? The pendulum swung the other way, and he had so much, and this, I mean, it's not just Atkins. We'll just say the front office in general had way too much hubris, right? They felt like they knew more than everybody else, and that they were going to make these moves. And now we're in a spot where literally something has to be done, and has to be done soon. Adam, I know that one of the things that this fan base loves to talk about is the guys who are doing well in AAA. Aroldis Martinez is at 12 home runs. Power has been the biggest Achilles heel on this team. Just to put into perspective where this power lies, the number one home run hitting dude on this team, Dalton Varsho. And good for him. Honestly, he's on pace for 25 home runs. He's literally doing everything he has to do. Dalton already, by the way, is at a 2.5 wins above replacement, which is, I mean, insane, being we're right around the quarter mark of the season. I don't think he's going to be a 10 WAR guy, but he probably is going to be a 6 or 7, which is elite, right? So he hasn't been the problem. The problem is Jose Ramirez in his last 19 games has 10 home runs. In 19 games. In 19 games, the month of May, Jose Ramirez has more home runs than anyone on the Toronto Blue Jays. And that is a problem. So, Adam, when you look at what's down in Buffalo and Aroldis Martinez, right, like we just said, 12 home runs, 22 years old, though. Addison Barger, this is the guy who already got a sniff of the big leagues. He's rolling with a 950 OPS in Buffalo. Nathan Lukes, who turns 30 in July, so I'm not as high on Lucas, but he's hitting 331 in AAA. And then we've talked about Spencer Horwitz here on the show a lot. He's got an on-base percentage of over 450. How long, Adam, do you give it till they've got to call one of these guys up? Kevin Biggio has been a black hole. Justin Turner struggling, and I'm not saying they're DFA and Justin or anything like that, but how long can the rope be with this team before they have to do something?
Well, I think that rope is run out. The season's over. You continue with this. You continue with this roster. The season's over, right? I mean, you're hoping that everyone it's a miracle hits. We're all back. George is back. Turner's back. Biggio's like Biggio at the end of last year. Everyone's back. I think it's got to start soon. And I really do think, as we mentioned, this next 4-week stretch is going to determine a lot. If we continue to lose, more and more pressure is going to be put on the front office to make moves. And I'm going to agree. I don't think the moves will be made if it's going to be Ross Atkins, because that's Ross Atkins jumping off the whole run prevention strategy and panicking. Someone's got to make those moves. But you got to get space on the roster for all these guys. I mean, think about, you got Horwitz, right? I mean, he's testing out a little bit of second base, but you got a bit of a logjam going on in the infield, in the outfield. You got to start either demoting people, you got to put them on phantom ILs, you got to start trading people in order to somehow try and save this season. But even that, let's be honest, guys, I love these guys down in AAA. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I want them to get a chance. We've seen how good they've been for the last couple of years. But are we really going to depend on guys in AAA with barely any major league experience to save and turn around a season? Right? Like, that's kind of wild to think about that.
Like, what are they, Davis Schneider?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. But is everyone Davis Schneider? We got to be a little bit realistic, right? So you almost got to hunt this season, see what you got, move some pieces around in terms of roles, maybe see if some dudes can be guys, and see where we go from there, right? But I think it's got to happen sooner rather than later.
So going to chat here, Choo-Choo says, if the Jays basically promote all the Buffalo boys in a rebuild, make no mistake, that is equally a bad team, just cheaper. And Nick, I think he has a point there, right? And Adam touched on it, that relying on these guys who are making debuts from AAA to step up huge and save a season is a ridiculous ask. But do you think we are at the point where, if nothing else, they at least got to see what they've got in these guys?
I mean, look, like your designated hitter, Danny Burgers, is batting 170. Like, I don't know what other argument you need other than that, right? It like seriously, there is multiple people down there with potential. Fuck it. Like we just lost 3 in a row to, what I would argue is a kind of a bottom feeder team. Yes, we're on the road, but this is supposed to be the easy part of the schedule, right? Like, what's going on here? Do something. And I think that's why people are so frustrated with Ross Atkins, because he is so committed to the strategy that he has. And we've talked about this a lot, by bringing up the kids and by demoting some people, defanging some people, trading some people, that is almost the first step of him saying I was wrong. And I don't know if he can do that, right? Because if he says I was wrong, if his actions start to indicate I was wrong with where I was taking this team, then Rogers Communication Company or Mark Shapiro or whoever it is, that's when they go, okay, well, time to go, right? So it's almost like he is so committed to making this work that's holding us back from making the necessary changes that we need to make.
See, that's
Jen had a
the
tweet.
problem. That's the problem, is that ownership has given Shapiro and Atkins an over $200 million payroll, 246 luxury tax payroll. And they're going to turn around to ownership and say, we need to call up guys from Buffalo to try to turn things around. They can't do that.
It has to work.
Yeah.
It has to work for their jobs. It has to. You're so right.
I mean, Jen, the tweet you sent out this afternoon made me literally burst out laughing, where you were like, you got to hand it to the Tigers, really taking care of business in the weaker part of their schedule.
You said you had to tip your cap to them.
Yeah, tip their cap, tip your cat, tip that big cowboy hat.
I believe the Jays were 5 games under 500 when they entered this soft part of the schedule. They are now 3-4 in 7 games and are now 6 games below 500. So they're in a worse off position than when they started the soft part of the schedule. And I'm hearing fans and broadcasters talking about how it's lucky that when they play the Pirates, they're going to miss their 2 best pitchers. Is that what this team has been reduced to? Right? Like, oh my goodness, we're going to face one of the worst teams in baseball, and we're going to face their worst pitchers. We have a chance. What are we doing? What?
I mean, we're all exasperated. I like your response exactly sums up how this fan base is feeling, Jen. By the way, to everybody in the chat, thank you so very much for being here. We're well over 100 right now, pushing 120. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're in here. And obviously going to do our best to get to as many of your comments as we possibly can here. Joel, I'm going to go to you here real quick to talk some Yusei Kikuchi. Okay. With where this organization is headed, is Kikuchi gone? And I ask that knowing that Yusei absolutely loves Toronto. I think he has really developed quite a bond with some of those starting pitchers in Toronto. His family loves the city. I think there is a pathway to him being here more long term, but with how they're playing, can they afford to try and do that? Or do you think they're at the point where like he's almost gone for sure as one of the more valuable guys on an expiring contract?
Yeah. So like, I'm 100% on board with the idea that I don't want Atkins making any more moves. He doesn't get to make moves. So the first move that would have to be made is a GM that I would trust to make moves. So that has to come first. Then what I would hope out of that deal with Kikuchi is some sort of Aroldis Chapman deal where we're going to put you on a contender and then come back to free agency. We'd really like to bring you back because we feel like you have a home here. You had no success in this. This is the same thing almost with Teo, where I don't understand these contracts not being able to be signed, where you didn't have success anywhere else. You were not a successful Major League Baseball player when you were in Seattle. You came here, and now your value is exponentially more than it ever would be, especially coming off of what it was. He's getting paid $10 million this year. If Kikuchi goes on and puts up another 350, 360 ERA and eats up 180 innings, he's going to be looking at 17 to $22 million, right? That's a nice contract to be able to sign. What is that based off of? A nice working relationship with Pete Walker. How is that not some sort of situation where we can turn a trade now into a signing later, right? You need to be able to do those double type moves to make you better. If you're folding on the season, I need prospects back and the ability to sign in the future. So I need some sort of GM who's got that wherewithal to sit you down and say, we're not just telling you that you're being traded. We're talking to you in advance of that trade and saying our grand scheme of things. And hopefully you're on good enough terms with the guy that you can pull off a move like that.
So Joel, a couple of questions here from the chat. So I will just start with Dr. Mantis Toboggan, who says our management has become the definition of insanity, which really does speak to their ego, in my opinion. And that is one thing that has always rubbed this fan base the wrong way when it comes to this front office, is that they have that schmarmy, know-it-all feel that they exude when speaking to us like we don't know what baseball is. But Andrew's question for you here, Joel, is do you really think Atkins is in charge of the moves? And we're going to go around the horn here and see what you all think. But it is an interesting idea that, because I do think Shapiro and Atkins is always sold as a combo, and maybe they are. But if you just look at human psychology, I think you will see that Shapiro's not going to take a bullet for Atkins here. If he has a choice from Rogers of you get a new general manager or we replace both of you, I don't think there's a world out there where Shapiro actually is like, no, we're both gone then. So do you think then, to Andrew's question, is Shapiro the real problem here?
Yeah, yeah. I'm the guy who's seen Moneyball 300 times, and he's the antagonist. He was the antagonist. He was the do it by committee guy from 2002. That's what that movie's about. I keep bringing this up. In that movie that takes place, made in 2012, takes place in 2002, that's a decision by committee GM who sits there and goes, what do I feel about that player? What do I feel? And he looks around the room to everybody in the room. That is a writer's interpretation of who Shapiro is more than a decade ago, and nothing has changed. This is not the smartest guy in the room when it comes to baseball. This is a guy who, I've said it, thinks about the architecture, doesn't build the architecture to make the team better, builds the architecture for a better fan experience while the team gets worse and ruins the fan experience. Like, absolutely, you've got to cut the head off the dragon, and you've got to cut the middle head off if it's a three-headed dragon too. So it goes to the top, and you can't just expect Shapiro to be able to bring somebody in, because I truly don't think that his love is for winning a World Series. I don't think that that's truly what he goes to sleep at night and dreams about. I don't think that one bit.
The Blue Jays front office is truly fascinating to me, because there is such a groupthink movement within this organization that just is really tough to wrap your head around, knowing that no one has autonomy, no one is making a decision based on how they're wanting to build the team. It's a group of executives sitting in an office compromising.
It's a Disney Star Wars movie.
It's literally a Disney Star Wars movie. That's the Toronto Blue Jays. Perfect metaphor. The Toronto Blue Jays are a Disney Star Wars movie. I'm very curious, Juan, on where Jerry DiPoto is for his autonomy with the Mariners. And when you look at the Blue Jays front office, and this is one thing that I love having you on the show for, is that despite the fact the Mariners and the Blue Jays do have very similar identities and have some very similar problems, they are run very differently. Do you, I guess the question is, what in your opinion is the value of groupthink and a collaborative effort? And when you look at the way things are done in Mariners land with DiPoto, would you prefer one guy at the helm making the decisions? And I'm not saying the Mariners aren't obviously very analytical and there's a bunch of people involved in these decisions, but I think far more so than Ross Atkins has full autonomy, Jerry DiPoto has far more autonomy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it goes to track record, right? Like, for me, I think Jerry DiPoto is given all the grace in the world because of the rotation that he drafted and is now performing in the major leagues. Like, maybe the Phillies can compare it. All right, definitely the Phillies can compare it to. I'll give them that. But nobody else really. And I know there's some other strong rotations, but he's got enough of a track record and says, hey, look, I can identify pitchers, which is one of the hardest things to do in the game. And that gives him enough leeway for sure. When it comes to Ross Atkins and Shapiro, I think like what Toronto fan bases in the Grand Scoot has to get behind is the fact that I don't think they're being replaced before the trade deadline. So if, Vladdy and Bo and the big names are not getting traded before the trade line deadline because you don't trust those guys to make those decisions, that's fine. With that being said, you got some rental players that you absolutely have to trade, like Kikuchi and like Garcia. Nate Pearson might be a reclamation project that you can get some value back for because he has some upside due to his prospect ranking as he was coming up. And hearing how much you guys think Shapiro and Atkins would do a horrible job at the July trade deadline, I would love for DiPoto to poach your entire franchise right now and get us whomever we can to push us over that playoff hump. You're right. DiPoto has way more decision making and trust within the organization, but I think that comes from developing and identifying a very, very strong pitching staff, one of which was drafted 5 out of the 6 starters that we've used this year. So you gotta show something, and Ross Atkins and Shapiro have had a long time in Toronto to show, that they can build a championship caliber roster, and they haven't done that. The Blue Jays just have not been good enough. Even, when you thought Vladdy hits 48 home runs and you think they're going to go on a run and they're World Series favorites in the preseason rankings. The right pieces were believed to be in place, but they didn't get it right, and they don't have a track record in Toronto of success to show that they should be given another chance. Got to make what's best for the organization at the trade deadline. Hope that you can use that as a resume builder to go find your next job for Atkins and Shapiro, and then the Blue Jays need to move on in the offseason and get the Blow and Vladdy situation right, whatever that is, whether it's an extension, let them play out the contract or trade, but they got to get these moves right to get you guys back on track.
Can I just
so Nick, I would love
and,
sorry,
Scott.
buddy.
I just want to jump in here, and maybe I'm going to derail things, but I loved what you were talking about in terms of like the development of all these Seattle Mariners pitching, and that's something that Adam and I have talked about a while now. Is the fact that you have this massive wave, you get Bo, you get Vlad, you get Biggio, you get all these guys, these young prospects coming up, and then ever since then, it's felt like yes, you had Manoah, and then most recently you've had Davis Schneider, but there really hasn't been any internal, guys coming out of nowhere. And when you look at, all of these winning cultures, when you look at the Braves, when you look at the Astros, who are good for so long, when you look at all of these teams, it seems like every year there's a new guy, right? This is their new guy now. And it's, where did this guy come from? I have no idea. He just popped out of nowhere, and their developmental staff, boom, he's good. You look at the Baltimore Orioles right now, and holy crap, like they're growing on trees over there. Where is that with us? Is that on Atkins? Is that on Shapiro? Is that on the coaching and the developmental team, the scouting? Like whose fault is that? And why are we not getting more guys breaking out?
Nick, it's the biggest organizational failure of this front office regime, in my opinion, is the lack of player development that has gone on over the last 9 years. And of course, we always remember Shapiro taking over for Anthopoulos, right? And offering Anthopoulos the GM job, he turned it away because he wanted to have full autonomy, and that was not the direction the Blue Jays were going to go in. And then Shapiro proceeded to lambaste AA with, you traded away the farm. This is not how you build a team. And then, you know, the speech about not believing in windows and so on and so forth, and the waves of talent that we would see and were promised, right? And I think that's one of the biggest craw in all of our hats here is like, you know, it's a real pain to expect these waves of talent and to watch an organization try and build around that ideal and then it be a complete failure. So, Nick, I am going to see what you and Adam feel about James Click, because currently there is a perception amongst the fan base that Click maybe isn't the heir apparent because he's already part of the problem, right? He has been indoctrinated into the Blue Jays system. My pushback for that, and I will let you guys speak on this, my pushback is that I think when they grabbed James Click, it was pretty obvious he was the just in case things don't work out with Atkins guy, right? So I have a hard time believing that Ross Atkins is like, oh, yes, please, James Click, let's figure out exactly, you're a part of the team as much as anybody. Oh, yes, your advice and your way of doing things, we're going to integrate this into the Blue Jays system. So, Nick, where are you at on James Click? Do you think that this is a guy that, like, 2022 World Series champion ring on his finger, right, from the Astros? Is he the heir apparent? And if not, do you think that they go outside the organization?
Well, I definitely like it better than what we have right now. But I don't think that necessarily means that it's the answer for me. I do kind of agree with the sentiment that some people, like you said, some viewers are saying that he is now integrated into the system, and I don't really want anyone who has been, for lack of a better term, brainwashed with what it is that we are doing over here. I think I'm looking for somebody else that is gonna bring in new ideas. I'm not sure how many of you guys are football fans out there, but a couple of years ago, my biggest team, the Green Bay Packers, we go out, we get this young guy. His name's Matt LaFleur. He comes in with all these bright ideas. Everyone thinks he's crazy. It works out. Now, that's a little anecdotal evidence right there, but that was somebody who was completely outside the organization because we were going down a dark pathway, and we said, you know what, screw this. We want to completely do a 180, and we want to shift. And I think that for me, okay, we're going to go to this other guy who is, been now in our system for a little while now. Maybe he can do it. No, I think I want to have a completely different ideology coming in, and the same thing goes for the manager. If John Schneider gets fired, I don't want Don Mattingly being the guy now for time. Like the same thing that we did with Charlie, right? Okay, Charlie gets fired. John is the guy. He runs into a couple wins. Well, now maybe is he good at baseball? Now can he call a good game? Can he lead a team? I don't know, but they said screw it, and now we're running with him, and now we're learning. Oh wait, maybe that's not the case. Maybe there was a little bit of a fluke to the end of the season where he was managing. I don't want it to be a Don Mattingly, and I don't really want it to be a James Click long term. He can, if they get fired this season, then he can finish out the season and he can do that. But come off season time, I think you really gotta evaluate and look for somebody with some new and some bright ideas.
Jen, anything to add about internal options like Click or Mattingly, and if they were to go that route, if you want anything other than just the interim tag on those?
I'm really curious to what extent they have been indoctrinated, because I would like to think that both men have enough baseball experience and success behind them that they would be willing to push back on things that they disagree with. I'm not saying that they are. I'm saying that I'm curious, right? I wonder if they do. because they don't seem like pushovers to me. They don't seem like guys who would just sit there and say, "Oh yeah, okay, sounds good." I think that they're guys with enough experience and enough knowledge of the game or how to run a team that they might, just be biding their time and waiting to get in there. I really don't know. That's the thing. That's why it's too difficult to evaluate. I do agree that. So first of all, I think it's a real long shot that Atkins is going to be fired midseason. I think it's a real long shot. If he is, then yeah, I think Click is the interim general manager. I think it is much more likely that Schneider gets fired midseason, but that still is all a failure on Atkins, right?
You mean most general managers shouldn't be able to have 3 different managers in their term?
I mean, probably not ideal. Probably not. So, I really think all fingers point to Atkins. And if he and Mark are as much of a duo as everybody claims that they are, then the fingers are pointed squarely at the 2 of them. And so I think if this season just, continues at the pace that it's going, I think ownership has to make that decision to clean house. And I don't even know if they have it in them, to be honest. I think as long as they're making money, they're relatively hands off.
Okay, so we are at the 1 hour mark here on Long Toss. Thank you so very much to all of you who are following along in the chat. We are pushing 150 of you in there. Please remember to hit that like button if you can and subscribe. We have with us Juan Forno of the Seattle Mariners walk-off. We have the boys from Blue Jays today, Adam and Nick. We have Joel, Hey Kami from TikTok, and Baseball Jen with us. It has been a heck of a first hour here. By the way, Thursday night, it is an off day for the Blue Jays. And very much like Long Toss tends to, in 2024 anyways, have been more of a therapy session than anything else. We are doing a live version of pretty much this at the Comedy Bar. Very excited to have you boys from Blue Jays today coming down. You're going to be a part of the panel. We'll have Nick and Adam there. We've got Shoa Lee from Jays Talk on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. And we've got all sorts of fun little surprises on that show. It's going to be from 7 until almost 9. Tickets just a little over $20. There are links in the pinned comment section there. So if you're in Toronto, feel free to drop by on the off day for the Jays. And Juan and I, the walk-off combo when the Blue Jays go to Seattle to play them July 5, 6, and 7. We're doing a baseball town in Seattle on the 6th. We've got Kirby Sneed and we have Taylor Sacedo as our guests. Very excited. Couple former Toronto Blue Jays bullpen pieces now with the Mariners in the pen. And the tickets for that, if you're in Vancouver and want to show the Americans outnumber those Americans with Canadian Blue Jays fans, you got the tickets there. The links are there. So there's our little preamble. We're going to keep going here. Again, talking the Blue Jays, we all have our topics here. So we are going to go around the horn and speak each person's topic. But before we get into that, we will talk the Seattle Mariners briefly here. Juan, I'm going to start with you here. What was the stat that you gave again last week, where if the Mariners score 3 runs or more, they win 85% of the time?
Yeah, and I think that stat has actually grown since then from this week. It's probably closer to 90%. Yeah, they can't win if they can't score more than 3 runs. It's tough. It's infuriating. I thought we were gonna have a good week. We started off with 2 strong wins against the New York Yankees, who's obviously, as you guys know, in the AL East is one of the strongest teams in the league this year, much to the chagrin of, I'm sure, everybody listening right now, myself included. Love taking two of 4 from them. Unfortunately, we didn't get the series win like I thought we would. And then we regressed a little bit against the Nationals, dropped 2 of 3 against them, but left on a high note. Pitching continues to look good. We're getting some players back. Sauce being one of them. He He unfortunately got the bad news of being reinstated from the IL today. Had to fly from Seattle to Washington, D.C.
Oh, man.
He warmed up twice today, but did not get into the game, and now gets to fly back to Seattle. Uh, poor guy. But 3-4 on the week is never the way you want to go. But we finished off the road trip 4-6, and we had to play the Yankees 4 times and Baltimore 3 times. I'm happy they're in your guys' division and not ours, because they're fucking good, man. They're really good teams.
Yeah, they really are. Joel, I think the funniest thing that could happen is the Seattle Mariners winning the AL West with a .54 winning percentage, right? The Jerry Dipoto winning 54% of the games. If they could win the division with that, do you think this Mariners team actually has a shot at the AL West? Because nobody seems to be interested in winning that division right now.
Yeah, we'll see. It's what does Houston want to do? Is Houston, or are they not? I think it all depends really on that. And you've got the former World Series champs that are they on a World Series hangover right now, or
their entire rotation is injured.
That's what I'm saying. Is that when that comes back, is Texas something to be like when Scherzer rolls back and you've got that rotation? John Gray comes back and you've got those guys rolling again. Are Texas a team to worry about? I think so. DeGrom's obviously not coming back this year, but next year. But yeah, so it's a situation where I think any of those three teams, there was that nice little fun run of Oakland and everybody comparing them to the Indians, but I don't think that was literally a legitimate option. So, but any of those three teams will have a good enough shot as any to. Is it going to be Seattle's pitching? Is it going to be Houston's pedigree, or is it going to be that good offense down in Texas when they get reinforced with pitching? It's any one of those teams have a good shot at that division.
Jen, if you were picking a team to win the AL West, do the Mariners enter that conversation?
Yeah, they enter the conversation. They have to, because to the original point, nobody seems to want to win the division, right? So there's a lot of baseball left to play, and I think any one of those three teams, you go on a hot streak and there it is, right? So it's just a matter of one of the three deciding to go on a hot streak.
No, and it's true. And I mean, you go into the chat here, Dulcimer says J-Rod woke up today. Very true. Julio has been struggling with the Mariners, and he showed up big today. RB says, give me a reign as GM. I won't let you down. So we're having applicants for the general manager position. That's good to see. And I think most of the fan base is at the point where it's like, please, anybody's got to be better than Ross, right? So do we have anything to add about the Seattle Mariners? I know that we don't give you enough love here, Juan, but everyone here is a Blue Jays fan, so it's just the way she rolls. Adam, Nick, do you boys have anything to add about the Seattle Mariners and just the AL West in general, and how that division has gone from a powerhouse last year to our version of the AL Central from 2023?
Yeah, I mean, I do think, to comment on the whole, who's winning the AL West this year. Yeah, I definitely think Seattle has a chance, but I also, even though they are, very similar records to the Toronto Blue Jay, I do believe Houston is going to turn around. I think I made a video on this a couple of days ago. The last 2 weeks, their pitching ERA has been skyrocketed, so that's been on the up and up for them. That's been the big problem. Their offense is just unreal. I mean, Kyle Tucker hit his 18th league-leading home run today. I think it's a matter of time. I think there will be a hot streak where they'll get back. I just don't believe that as much. It sounds like a Toronto Blue Jay comment. The talent on this team is way too good to them not get beat back in the race, right? But I think they're a little bit more talented than the Blue Jays. I think they'll be back. It's just a matter of time.
It's funny that both the Blue Jays and the Mariners can talk about how, man, we shouldn't have looked Teoscar Hernandez's production in like a gift horse in the mouth, right? Like, we all of us here at different times complained about how much Teoscar struck out, how much sometimes you would just watch him whiff on a ball but man, when he'd connect, and I think I think it's safe to say both organizations are kind of feeling the impact of not having a big time home run hitter on the team.
I'd take Teo over Haniger any day. For sure.
It's a
Easy.
question of what is an RBI guy, right? It's what is an RBI guy? It's a guy who at the end of the season has a lot of RBIs. And, you know, that's
Joel, you know that stat doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Who needs runs?
It's weird how we're in a generation where everyone who is in charge of a baseball team is so smart and they know everything about baseball, but RBIs are like at an all-time low. You lead the league in RBIs with like 115 when, you know, generations ago you could do it at 140, 150. These were RBI totals that used to happen. Even in my lifetime, these were RBI totals that used to happen. But now that doesn't exist.
I will say, Joel, I think that's not necessarily player, but it's offensive strategy, right? Everybody's playing for the big inning now. There's no small ball, there's no moving the runner over, there's no hitting it through the infield. All these things that we used to work on as players, every time we took batting practice has gone out the window. You don't see people bunt anymore. You know, there's no emphasis on scoring one run. You got to score 3 or 4 via the long ball. And that's why I think we're seeing those low RBI totals with.
Sorry, did you just say no hitting through the infield? Because that's all we fucking do over here.
I mean, what the infield in is a strategy. You hit the ball in the air. I probably didn't say that great, but you know, there's just no emphasis on it anymore. It's all or nothing. There's no 2-strike approaches. It feels like, and it's leading to the lower RBIs.
Okay, so one last topic here before we move on to going around the horn here and seeing what everyone has brought for today's show. And that topic is the letter of the law umpiring. And I when I say that, I'm talking specifically of a play that happened on Thursday night, I think it would have been. And the Chicago White Sox were playing the Baltimore Orioles. There was a runner on first and a runner on second with 1 out in the game. There was an infield fly ball, and the infield fly rule was in effect. Andrew Vaughn of the White Sox is on second base. He's a few feet off, and as the ball is popped up, he returns to the base. Gunnar Henderson, who is catching the ball, sees him and literally just steps around him. Could not affect him at all. Now, yes, I know that there are those hardcores out there that are just like, he did interfere. Everything that happened went down the way it should. And what happened is that he caught the ball, 2 outs. Then they called Gunnar Henderson for being interfered with by Andrew Vaughn, and Andrew Vaughn was out. This ended the game for the White Sox. And I know the White Sox suck, but they should at least be allowed to play out the game, in my opinion, losing 8-6 to the Orioles. So let's start with you, Jen, because I am curious as to where we're all at on umpiring in general, because it does feel like as we're getting closer to robot umps or the challenge system or whatever they try to do, I think it will be robot eventually, just for the betting aspect of things. Does it feel like umpires are maybe pushing back a little bit? Because I have no proof of this. I'm going on strict emotion and feel here, but it feels like umpiring has been particularly bad this year. Where are you at on the letter of the law calls? And if there's just a moment where maybe umpires should just let the baseball game play out, and if there's any repercussion at all, like the umpire union, we all know how strong it is. Is this just something us as fans got to start dealing with over the next couple of years until it's replaced?
Yeah, it might be. I mean, they talk, not to compare baseball to hockey, but they talk about in hockey about, referees are letting the flow of the game, right? Maybe not making some of those, unnecessary calls and just let the players play the game, right? And let them kind of their play dictate the outcome of the game. On the flip side, you want consistency with balls and strikes. So can you ask for consistency with balls and strikes, but then ask that other rules be applied situationally, right? I don't really know where to draw that line. I do think that Major League Baseball and the umpiring union need to take a look at the role of umpires and how they're affecting games. I really do. And I do think that there are some absolutely terrible umpires in Major League Baseball. And there ought to be some sort of system of and I don't know how this would look like with their union being so strong, but something where, you know, some kind of retraining or demotion or something of that nature, especially if, as you said, the league is going to, you know, marry themselves to betting.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I want to jump on that, Jen, right there. Sorry, Scott. I just want to jump on that.
No, Adam, jump in.
Max Scherzer actually came out and talked about a system, and I am completely on board with this, a system where you would take the bottom 10th percentile of umpires in terms of strike called accuracy and ball called accuracy, and they would be demoted to AAA. And then vice versa in AAA, you take the top 10% of strike ball callers and ball callers, you upgrade them. So then what that does, now it creates a bit of urgency where you have to actually do your job correctly, because what you're going to have happen is all the good umpires that are stuck in the minors going up into the majors and eventually filtering out all the bad ones. Now, obviously, you said a great point. It's the union. The union's a hard nut to crack. But that idea for me, I mean, sure, I would love robot umpires, but I think we all agree, like, there is a bit of the game where there's a bit of human element. We kind of like it, whether we hate it or love it. I think that would be still a good strategy if we didn't go with robot.
Well, I think everybody, like, I would prefer it if it was a human calling the game forever. I just want them to be better. That's
the way to get better. That, yeah.
Right? And, you know, so if there is a way that, they can create some type of system where it does create more competition, and the people who are good at their jobs are rewarded for being good at their jobs, and the people who are bad at their jobs are obviously, treated accordingly, then, I mean, I think that's the perfect scenario for everyone. Like you said, though, might not happen.
I mean, even in the chat here, Disa says, yeah, Scott, I've never bellyached about umps as much as I have this current season. Thought it was just me. Tricky, tacky calls, Deb says. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what direction you go when it comes to the umpiring. I love the Scherzer idea. I'll throw to you here, Juan, and I'll just start you off with, it's interesting to me that baseball players, right? The whole reason that Major League Baseball exists, the players, the reason us fans go to games and watch games and want to see what happens, the players have less security than the umpires when it comes to their jobs. And if there's any way around that, do you, I mean, this is not a new problem. Do you see this resolving itself in any way? Or is it actually going to get worse as umpires get closer and closer to possibly losing, if not their jobs, at least their power, their say in how the game goes?
Yeah, let me start off by saying fuck Angel Hernandez. I don't know if I'm allowed to use that word on this podcast, but that guy is fucking terrible. And I'm going to blow through our profanity count here. I know he's not the only one. I know that there's others, but it's just that guy is such a dipshit. With that being said, I like the idea of there being the possibility for human error. You know, I do think in moments where the game is on the line, having that challenge is good. You know, games are not being decided based off of horrible calls in most cases, because there are certain aspects that you can challenge, out at home to end the game or whatever the case may be. I love the idea of being able to challenge strikes and balls. Obviously, there's got to be rules and limits within it, but it sounds like all the players in AAA where it's being tested love it. And I think there are a lot of instances where those challenges are going to change a ball game. Today alone in the Mariners game, falling behind on Joey Gallo 2-0 versus two pitches that should have been called strikes. I mean, they were very clearly strikes that were called balls. And, a 2-0 count versus an 0-2 count is a very different approach as a hitter. Next pitch, Joey Gallo hit a home run. So being in a position to challenge mistakes and then there being repercussions is the other thing, right? Whether it's, Scherzer's idea of, guys going up and down, kind of like the Premier League in Europe and in soccer. If that's the answer, that's great. And you can weed out some of those, poor performing umpires like Angel, and then you kind of get away from the negativity around the subject. All the fans, everybody right now is because of technology able to see exactly how bad these umpires are and how bad these calls are. And now it's blown up in social media too. There are businesses that have popped up just to grade umpires outside of the MLB scope. It's not MLB creating these companies. So if a media company goes and says, wow, this guy had 88% of the calls right on strikes and balls, that's actually a really bad number. 88%
Yeah.
is horrific when it comes to calling strikes and balls, and it happens all too regular. So something's got to change. Angel Hernandez needs to retire. I don't care how much money it takes. I've been on this soapbox for years when it comes to this guy. The fact that he sued MLB because they didn't want him officiating playoff games is a joke. He's a disgrace. And something's got to change.
And you're not alone, Juan. If you go into the chat here, Chucharu says, I'm assuming the union would say, sure, you can demote the bottom 10%, but hey, they still get paid their salary and keep benefits. Worth it. Worth it. Pay them to not be there. Fine. New Brunswick, Canada guy says umpires should have options, LOL, which they really should. They really should.
3 options, you're out. Fuck off.
I love your tangent on Angel Hernandez and then Michael Borland. He's like, CB Buckner's terrible too, which is also
CB Buckner is terrible.
Oh yeah.
Mantis Toboggan says, I just noticed umps escalating situations too often. I think they need thicker skin. And yes, some system that invokes accountability. I mean, if this was the Toronto Blue Jays, that is a no accountability, just a bigger hat. But it is a problem within Major League Baseball. Joel, anything to add on the umpiring?
Yeah. I think that we don't promote the good umpires nearly enough. There are perfect umpiring games. I believe there was a perfect umpiring game in the postseason last year, which doesn't get any promotion. Juan brings up Angel Hernandez, but the equivalent positive conversation about an umpire that you don't see is never brought up, right? And so that's a terrible situation. I feel like the strike zone box puts us in a terrible position because that thing is not always bullseye accurate. That thing up and down. Sometimes you see a Jose Altuve box on like Aaron Judge, and you're like, what the hell is that? Like that strike zone's being cut off like at the hip. But it gives the fans this enlightened opinion of knowing that ball that misses by an inch, that's a slider that had 18 inches of lateral break on it, and 99% of that pitch looked like a strike, and right at the end it missed by an inch. To us, all we see is a circle outside of a box, and we're enlightened enough to say, what a terrible umpire. So it's kind of this situation where I probably see the future being some sort of automated strike zone calling system, right? But until then, let's not put the fans in some sort of superior position to be more enlightened than the umpire. Because you're not behind home plate with that box there telling you to the absolute millimeter what the hell's going on. You're seeing the actual game. You're seeing actual pitches, right? Also, it's a situation of like, if pitcher, I bet you there's a lot more situational accuracy to this thing than we give it. A pitcher who has very up and down movement, maybe you're very accurate at that, but maybe one specific pitcher, you can't pick the ball out of his delivery very well as an umpire. The same thing that happens to hitters. And you cannot really see when that ball crosses home plate if that's a strike or a ball, and it's more situational. Your accuracy might not be the same with Josh Hader as it is with a guy who's a standard right-handed delivery where they're not flowing out of the third baseman's box or the first baseman's side of things, right? So there's a lot of added elements. And then the other thing is that situationally, I give this to the umpire. If it's a 3-0 count and the pitcher is completely erratic and he's not hitting the strike zone, I hate that he can dot a slider low and away that catches an inch of the strike zone, and that's 3-1 now. It's just like, I like when the umpire says, no, you got to earn it. You got to throw him one, right? Like, I know that's not baseball, but that's an element of the game that kind of goes back to be like, you got to throw a strike here, buddy. I'm not going to allow this nipping the corner shit 3-0. So
Joel,
yeah.
everything you said makes sense. You're nailing it. It's all
I actually disagree. Personally.
Well, it is true though that if you're going to rake the umpires over the coal when they do bad work, that they probably should have a little bit more positive praise when they do well. Although I just keep picturing Maud Flanders, right? And she's like, won't someone please think of the umpires? Which, I mean, that's a tall order. And Juan, go ahead and with your counterpoint here before we go around the horn for topics.
Yeah, no, and I get it. It's a lot harder to in the moment, and a 98-mile-an-hour fastball that's coming in you quick. I understand that it is difficult to be accurate, but these guys are paid so much money to get it right. They got to be better. You to say that the box is not accurate, which is fair. It maybe the technology needs to be a little bit more advanced, but it's a business, and the business is catering to the fans that are watching it, right? So why wouldn't they want to have a voice, and why wouldn't they want to be angry if they're giving the perception by MLB that the umpires are bad? Because MLB is the one that decided to put that imaginary box as a strike zone to show fans whether it's a strike or not. So you can't blame the fans. I think that's not fair, especially when the umpires are making hundreds of thousands of dollars to get this shit right. It's a multi-million billion-dollar business. Officiating's got to be done right, in my opinion, and it can't be passed off as the fans, as armchair coaches or armchair umpires. I think that's part of the game, and you just got to wear that, whether the fans know what they're talking about or not. You get paid too much money to blame the fans.
Yeah, I think my point to that is just the fact that the fans are put in this incredibly enlightened position with that box, where it's literally just their. Like, obviously, a strike that misses by 6 inches is going to agitate you whether there's a box or not. That misses an Angel Hernandez call at 6 inches out. You don't need that box to know that ball should be called strike, right? And on those ones that are fractionally out, that that say, hey, we know. Well, we wouldn't have known if we were behind the plate, right? We come from this enlightened position of having that box there that makes our opinion. The box makes our opinion, not our opinion. Off of nothing, right? So it's the idea that every other sport doesn't just sit there and every single play point out the mistakes that are being made by the refs, or the bad officiating for basketball, or the lack of calls on the NHL. This is literally a highlighted focal point. Every single mistake that is ever made in a game is highlighted to every single new person trying to watch. And I just don't think that that's a good thing for bringing fans in. Like, I'll try to bring in a new fan to the game, and they all of a sudden know more than the umpire.
Yeah,
and
but I don't
think only that box does that.
I don't think most fans are complaining about the close calls that could have gone either way. It's the consistently bad calls that makes them angry, right? Like if you miss by an inch, you miss by an inch, and nobody expects you to be perfect by an inch. But it's too consistent on how much more than an inch it is. How obvious
it's ending a game in the 9th on
shit like that. You just can't
very questionable call. That
I never want a game to be decided by a officiating crew. Mm-hmm. It should never come down to that last call, and unless it's egregious and it has to be called. But we saw a Philadelphia Eagles fan in the Super Bowl, and they threw a holding call to end the game, and I'm like, that's the fucking Super Bowl. What are we doing? I understand that game 57 in Baltimore versus the Chicago White Sox is probably not going to have the same effect, but games shouldn't end because of officiating and not having any feel.
Totally true. I just compare it to what Dana White says about fighting, where he's like, don't leave it into the judge's hands. You got 2 strikes on you. If it's close, take a hack.
Yeah.
And then if it's called a strike and you let it go, that's baseball.
Okay, we're down to it. Last 30 minutes here of Long Toss. Really appreciate all of you in the chat. Thank you so very much. If this is your first time watching Long Toss, we do this every single Sunday from 6 till 8 East. Feel free to join us live on YouTube. We do try to get to as many of you in the chat as we possibly can. A big tip of the hat, if you will, to Juan, Adam, Nick, Joel, and Jen for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Just a reminder, too, Nick and Adam of Blue Jays today, they're going to be joining me at the Comedy Bar on Thursday. Tickets available for that. for Baseball Town in the pinned comment in the YouTube right now. And then we go from 7 till about 9, and it's going to be very similar to this, but you're going to be there live, and we're going to be able to go and get your comments and questions right there. And as Michelle Marie Beer says, hit the like button if you think umpires suck. So there we go. Okay, let's get into it. I love this part of Long Toss because I get to hear what you, the lovely panelists, have brought to the table for us to discuss today. Let's start with you boys with Blue Jays today. Adam, I would love to hear what your topic is. What are we throwing around the horn here and getting into?
All right, this one, actually, it's a shared one, I think, maybe. We even talked about this on our Blue Jays Today show, all of our podcasts, our video rooms. And the topic is Danny Jansen contract extension. We thought, ideally, if we were Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro, we would have signed him before the season began, because you got to realize Danny Jansen is more than just a catcher, more than a dude with a 1,000 OPS right now. I would argue he is literally the heart and soul of this Toronto Blue Jays team. And regardless of the rebuild we might be going into, or the continuous retooling, or maybe we get competitive again, regardless of where this team is at, you need someone like Danny Jansen on this team with that pitching staff, figuring it out in his almost 30s now of his career. What do you do? I want to throw it over to you guys and ask you guys the question. Where are you at with Danny Jansen? Obviously, I think we can all agree the way he's playing right now in a contract year, if I'm Danny Jansen's agent, I am pushing for him to wait to hit the free agency to get the best bang for your buck. But if you're the Toronto Blue Jays, how do you handle that situation? What does a contract look like? And I just want to hear your thoughts about the subject in general.
Just to add on to that very quickly as well, if he walks, are you fine with Alejandro Kirk being the guy?
Right.
And what happens if that is the case, because clearly there's a whole other conversation there as well.
Let's start with you, Jen, because you've been banging the Danny Jansen drum for the last few years now, just with how impressed you've been with him as a catcher, where he has how he has developed as a catcher. I mean, let's face it, Danny is basically at a point right now where I think we can actually say he has earned the cred of a veteran catcher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he has. And, he was my first interview, actually, when he was still with the Bisons. And he is incredibly intelligent, very mature, really understands the game really well. He is who you want behind that plate, whether he's catching your top pitcher or bringing along new guys and calling the game for them and getting them through however many innings. And as you were posing that question, before, I was thinking exactly what they ended up saying, which is that if you don't lock him up, Alejandro Kirk is your number one catcher. And that to me seems utterly disastrous. So yeah, I think you offer him, 5 years, 5 years, double digits. And do I think he'll take it? I don't know, because I also agree that he'll want to see what other teams are willing to offer him, especially depending on how he feels about the direction that the Blue Jays are taking. Because I can guarantee you that players are talking about the way that the team is going right now, behind closed doors, on the plane, to themselves. If they're unhappy, if they don't like decisions that are being made, whatever the case might be, they think there's dead weight on the team. I guarantee they're talking about it. So it really depends on where his mindset is at with the trajectory of this team and what his role would be, as to whether or not I think they even have a chance of locking him up. But I think from the Blue Jays perspective, you absolutely have to try.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that. I mean, you look at even going into a rebuild, nobody knows this organization like Jano knows this organization. He's been a part of the Toronto Blue Jays since he was drafted in 2012. He's one of the few successful developmental examples within this organization. And on top of all of this, he is so well liked in this clubhouse. Everybody there respects Danny Jansen. I mean, he's been on the show a couple times and is always so gracious with his time. He's just a good human. Joel, when you think Danny Jansen, you think Toronto. Is there any way
Anthopoulos draft pick?
Exactly. Is there any exactly? Is there any way I guess I'll phrase the question this way. Would you overpay for Danny Jansen to stay in Toronto? And I'm not saying we don't need to get astronomical, but let's say $1 million more a year than most other organizations would have went.
Cool. Let's run down a fictitious hypothetical world where Bo and Vlad are dealt for commodities. I would, if I'm the GM, I would sign him and I would call him team captain. And I'd bring out a C and I'd put a C on his jersey. Because hell, if the Yankees and the Red Sox can do it, hell, the Canadian team sure as hell can do it. You know, so it would kind of be a selling point on saying that you will be probably a voice in the future. You're the type of guy that we will want answering the call at the end of the game when it comes to a win or loss. The buck stops here, a captain mentality, because that's what we've been missing for the last whatever since, you know, Anthopoulos left, is a leader. We brought in players who were supposed to be leaders. They haven't really filled that spot. So I'd hope that he would be signed not only as one of our most talented players, but really, and then bring in the pitchers. You know, if you want to keep him here, bring in all those pitchers and say, these are your boys. Bassett's going to be here for a few more years. Barrios is here for a few more years, and so is Gosman. And these guys, unless they're dealt, which they could be, you know, we're rebuilding everything. Like, you have a strong relationship there. You want to stay tied to these guys. Their success is your success. That type of thing, right? Because I think he's a classic baseball player. And, you know, like I say, our two best hitters are still Anthopoulos draft picks. Right? You got to keep them.
Juan, when you look at Danny Jansen, I mean, you're cheering for a team where you've got a thumper in Big Dumper behind the plate. And it is so rare to have a catcher with the ability to hit 20 plus home runs. And Danny has that ability. Now, we'll go to chat here real quick because they are making some good points here. Chucharu says, I think Danny is made of glass. And that has been the big knock on Jano, is that he cannot stay on the field, and he is now finally wearing protection on his hand. I mean, if you were to look at this protection, it would make you laugh, because he has literally invented and done everything he can to have protection and still not wear batting gloves, which is wild. How you played catcher yourself, how important is having that captain behind the plate? And when you look at a guy like Jano, who has been there for that amount of years and know the organization in and out like he does, how important is that to a team?
Yeah, catcher position is massively important, especially with a roster organization philosophy around pitching too, right? So, you know, catchers don't get enough credit when it comes to the success of pitching. And you know, looking at Toronto's pitching staff, you know, you got to think that Jano's doing something right for sure. I will say I wholeheartedly believe, and I have said this since the day of the trade, Gabriel Moreno should be the catcher of the Blue Jays now and for the foreseeable future, if not the next decade. But you know, you can't dwell on those ghosts of the past, and got to make the best of it now. I don't trust Kirk to be a full-time catcher at all. You know, not to put shame on the guy, but I don't trust that the body's going to hold up with his conditioning and his frame, with it being such a physically demanding position. I also don't know if I agree with giving Danny Jansen the captain lettering on his jersey. You know, you look at captains that exist, you know, Aaron Judge, Derek Jeter, you know, I don't put Danny Jansen in the same kind of realm.
Veritek.
Veritek is, yeah, I don't know if I'm putting Jansen next to Veritek. I hate Boston, but I don't think Jansen has done enough yet. Stay healthy and sign that contract, and let's see what you do. He could be there in a few years. And I do think that maybe that's his ceiling, and that's okay. That's a great ceiling. That's not a knock on Jansen at all. I think Veritek had a very, very happy and successful career in Boston. Um, but you got to have somebody, right? And I don't know that there's going to be an answer now that isn't or that is better than Jansen. So if I'm Danny Jansen, I'm not signing that extension and having a career year right now, this close to free agency, especially with the Toronto Blue Jays organization in a bit of a flux. You don't know where these star players are going to be or if they're going to re-sign on or if there's going to be a fire sale at the deadline this year. You know, he himself could be moved. I don't see that happening because of, you know, what he means to the organization, being a draft pick and coming up all that way from, you know, being drafted to being the starting catcher on the MLB roster. But you know, he's in a contract year and he's going to want to win. And I do think there are going to be teams out there that see him as a massive asset. And I would go and offer him, you know, the 4-year, $44 million contract in hopes that he could stay healthy, because I do believe the catcher position is one of the most important spots. But you guys got it wrong with Moreno, so don't make the same mistake twice. Find a way to lock Jano up, but it's not going to be easy based off of where the organization is and where he is in relationship to free agency.
Anything to add on Jano?
Okay. I think you guys killed it, and I do I also agree, because, you know, if I was going to ask like a small follow-up question in terms of the whole trade aspect too, right? Because again, like you said, he is in the contract year, and if this is truly a fire sale, I mean, you're looking at a guy that's got an OPS over 1 right now. Like, he doesn't even need to play catcher on another team. You could trade for him and have him as your DH at this point, so there could be trade value there. But I also tend to, you know, go on the other side of things as well and say, well, he does mean so much. And if you are 100%, like if you are so locked in that you want to get this guy onto an extension, you know, do you want to even flirt with that idea of sending him over to another squad? I don't think so, you know.
Couldn't agree more. Nick, do you have a topic for us, my guy?
That was our collective topic.
I like it.
So,
no, it's a co-topic. It's a co-topic, and it's perfect because we are running out of time. So this just opens things up for us. Let's go to you, Jen. You always come prepared with multiple topics for us. What do you have for us tonight?
I was going to ask what you all thought of those leaked City Connect hats, and if the T really stands for traffic, not Toronto. But I think I'll go in a different direction here. It was a day or two ago, Buster Olney tweeted about the offense league-wide being down, and he compared statistics from 2024 to statistics from 2004, which, if my math is correct, was 20 years ago, and that makes me really sad. But people who are offering up suggestions as to maybe how to get more offense league-wide. So one suggestion, for instance, was that you could only use 4 pitchers per game. That's it. I guess not counting injury. Bill James weighed in and said that his proposed rule adjustment is that, except for injury, a starting pitcher may not be removed from the game in the first 5 innings before he has been charged with a run allowed. So there was quite a bit of discourse over, you know, what rule changes might be implemented. You know, we've already seen, you know, the pitch clock and the bigger bases and, you know, no shift and so on and so forth, and still offenses down league wide. So what would you guys do if you could make a change or a couple of changes? Any of these pitcher changes that are being discussed, or something else entirely? I'm curious.
Joel, let's start with you, buddy. Where are you at on this?
I take the control of the baseballs away from Major League Baseball. That's what I did first, because I don't trust them one bit with the balls. Exit velos seem to be a little bit strange. That was more so based off, I think, the first 6 weeks of data. I haven't looked at it really much in the last month, but we were seeing situations where exit velos that were resulting in balls going about 15 feet, 20 feet over the fence last year, falling about 5, 10 feet short of the warning track. So it's like, and that just kind of bleeds back to a 5-year trend of not being able to trust those baseballs. When it comes to starting pitching, I very much think that something needs to be done to bring us back to that starting pitcher mentality of going there being more value on 200 innings, 220 innings. We're put in a situation where these guys are given quick hooks, and you go to 8 bullpen arms, and then you're still rolling the dice on all of these guys being successful. Any single one of them could just absolutely crap the bed and be Eric Swanson giving up 12 runs. So it's this situation where I don't know what specifically would be the best. I've heard stuff where they're gonna punish you by taking your DH out of the game if you pull your starting pitcher before the 7th. I've heard those types of moves being made, but yeah, I don't know whether it's maybe it's a dimensional shift in the game. We have such a we live in a time period where ballparks are smaller, so the pursuit of the home run is so much more, hey, go try to hit the ball 315 feet down the line, get a cheap home run, as opposed to situationally hitting for batting average. How do we, so it's the goal in this day and age, with pitchers being so amazing and whiff rates being so high, you have to hit the ball hard if you want to score, right? So stringing together 5 base hits is not really so how do you get more back to that style of play? What do you do? What do you do to the ball? Do you move the mound back 2 feet, which has been talked about? So I don't know what it is, but yeah.
You know what?
I want to just take the balls away. That's the only thing that I can say. Take the balls out of Major League Baseball.
I want to give a quick shout out to Johnny Eaton, who is producing this show right now for us. If you've noticed how smoothly the tech has gone and that we've got a fancy new overlay, it is because of him. And I know that he's a big baseball nut as well, and always likes to bring up the fact that we would see more offense if pitching was limited to how many pitchers you could have on a roster, because it would force pitchers, and this is even a theory on how to bring down the amount of injuries with pitchers, is that if you force them to pitch longer, they're not going to be able to go all out. They're not going to be able to do what they've been doing over the last 5 years, which is give it 100% of the time. And we don't know what exactly is causing Tommy John surgery, but it feels pretty obvious that velocity and the intensity these guys are throwing at could be part of it. And if we went back a little bit on the way baseball used to be played, right? Go back to the 80s, the 90s, where you had your Greg Maddoxes, you had your guys who just could pitch, your Nolan Ryans who pitched till he was 46. And not that there weren't arm injuries. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is perhaps the solution is right in front of us. And Juan, I'll throw to you with just the idea of just starting pitchers going further into the game. And I know the boys on Blue Jays today brought up a great Max Scherzer quote with umpires, and I'm gonna bring one up of my own with the idea of the double hook. And Scherzer was like, if you incentivize them keeping the pitcher in longer, they are going to do it. And of course, if you don't know what the double hook is in chat, what it is that if you were to pull your pitcher before a certain time, so let's say it's the 5th inning, you would also need to pull your designated hitter. So not only would you lose your pitcher, you'd lose your best hitter. So Juan, how important do you think it is to try to stretch these pitchers out longer? Do you think that maybe this is something that's being overblown a little bit by Major League Baseball fans? And do you think there is a way to increase offense without, for lack of a better term, mucking up the game?
Yeah, I think like we saw it this offseason with the no shift and the larger bases, like Jen said, they are trying to do things to produce more offense and more run scoring. I think the issue is that pitching has just adapted and progressed where hitting has gone the wrong direction, right? Like I said earlier in the episode, pitchers are figuring out a way to, enter high leverage situations and be max effort, so that they can be as effective as possible. And that's resulting in throwing less innings and less pitches. And I think that the hitters just have to find a way to fucking adapt like the pitchers did. Pitchers found ways to improve the outlook of what their game is, and we're seeing it now with less runs scoring, and offense, and runs are exciting, and that's what MLB sees as a business. They want more runs. Well, maybe we should sit down and say, let's look at how to score more runs, and selling out for the strikeout or the home run isn't it. You're gonna win a lot of 3-1, 3-0 games by only living and dying by the home run, like a lot of teams do, like the Mariners do. You just have to, there's so many ways. And I would be willing to bet that 80% of professional baseball hitters can't get down a fucking sack bunt anymore. I understand that one run is sometimes not gonna do what you need it to do if you're down by multiple runs late in the game, but we have gotten away from traditional ways of scoring runs, hit and run, stolen bases. I know we're seeing a lot more of those with these young kids and the easier way to steal bases now, but hitting an offensive strategy just needs to adapt when it comes down to it. There are coaches that are offensive coordinators. We're hiring people just to strategize how to score runs, and we're not doing it. So we got to look at ourselves and say, how do we score? How do we put up 5, 6 runs? We got a runner on first and second, nobody out. Let's move them over to second and third and play for 1 or 2 runs this inning and then play for 1 or 2 runs next inning instead of hoping that somebody runs into a baseball and scores, 3 runs with one swing. There's other ways to do it. Pitchers adapted. Hitters got to do the same thing now.
I'd love to add on to that very quickly and just, kind of say how much I agree with you on, the adapting that you're talking about here. Like I truly believe in just human innovation as a whole. The problem right now is pitching. That is what's dominating. Someone way smarter than all of us very soon is going to come up with an idea on how to either better develop hitters, better train them, or attack pitchers more. And that person is then going to create some type of system and some type of team that dominates. And 20 years down the line, we're going to have a movie called Hitter Ball, very similar to Moneyball. And we're all going to be like, holy shit, that was so smart, When I look over at the MLB player stats, I have them right here. Let me read off the top 5 players in OPS. Aaron Judge, Kyle Tucker, Shohei Ohtani, Marcelo Zuna, and Juan Soto. Those are all stars. The good hitters hit. I think what's happening right now is you're seeing the disparity between the really good players and the players who aren't actually that good. The pitching has gotten to a point where it is now separated the people who are really elite at this game and the people who are not. Because the people who are elite, they're going to keep doing it. They're going to keep adapting. They are going to keep innovating, like you're saying, and they are going to find a way to annihilate that baseball. I think this really just comes down to a fact that now we're seeing that pitching is dominating. There's going to be a more emphasis put on by coaches and teams and everybody to develop better hitters. And hopefully 5 or 6 years later down the line, it might be a process, but the other shoe is going to drop. And then here comes the offense again.
You're so hopeful, Nick. You're so hopeful. And I really do hope from the bottom of my heart you're right. Although we did just watch baseball literally change the rules and get rid of the shift because hitters refused to adjust. So fingers crossed that they catch on and that we do see more offense because they start being incentivized and rewarded for adjusting. But
that's the ticket though. See what we have is the Moneyball pursuit has made us pursue one singular number, OPS, WAR, all these singular pursuits of what a baseball player is broken down to one singular concept. We sit and we watch a baseball game and we hit a home run. You hit a home run, 1 run, solo home run. Okay. That is 5,000 OPS. Okay. That's what we're paying for. Okay. if you have 2 runners on and you hit a base hit with 2 outs, both those runners score, that's 2 runs. It's 1 more run than a solo homer. That's 2,000 OPS. That's 2,000 OPS to 5,000 OPS, but 2 runs were put on the board. The pursuit of scoring runs is not the same as the statistical pursuit. You have something that says, oh, my OPS is this. Yeah, but this guy hit a base hit with 2 outs that won the game, and it's not valued at the same thing as something that is worth less. So you have to convert these stats to pay off what really wins games. And that creates more Tony Gwynns. That creates more guys out there to hit 350. The goal isn't to hit 350, Ray. The goal isn't to be Luis Arias. Okay? All the guys that you mentioned have huge contracts coming to them. $350 million deals. The batting champion is tossed around like the city bicycle. Everybody gets a ride. The values are completely out to lunch on what can win at a baseball game. Who's the guy that you want with 2 outs, runners on second and third up at the plate in all of Major League Baseball? You need those 2 runs to score with 2 outs. Luis Arias. He's not valued that.
Amazing topic, Jen. Nailed it. That was great. I think we've got time for one more topic. So I know Juan and Joel, you both go ahead with Juan. Okay.
Yeah, Juan.
Juan, what is your topic? Before we get into it, though, I do want to just thank everyone in the chat. Thank you so much. We were pushing 150 viewers at times. Couldn't and wouldn't want to do this without you. If you were into this long toss and enjoyed it, we're pretty much doing it live at the Comedy Bar on Thursday. The boys for Blue Jays Today, both Nick and Adam are going to be there. I'll be hosting the thing. We have Shoa Lee from Sportsnet coming down to join the roundtable. Come do this in live form with us. Tickets available in the pinned comment. And on that, Juan, the floor is yours, my guy.
Yeah, I want to talk about the importance of farm systems, because right now Toronto and Seattle are in very different spots in terms of utilizing their farm system, right? Obviously, Toronto has to look at your guys' farm system and say, okay, we got 2 guys in the top 100. And right now, our 39 out of 100 guy is not showing well. And then Orelvis at 69, hopefully. Whereas on the flip side, the Mariners have, 4 guys in MLB's top 100. I believe ESPN just released a new one and had 6 Mariners. How do you guys weigh, keeping talent versus trading talent? And in your situation, what would you want to see back if you guys were to offload a lot of these players that we've discussed, whether it's Kikuchi or Jansen or, Garcia, Vladdy, Bo? What would the kind of return you would want to see to give you hope that the rebuild or retool, however you want to describe it, is not going to be as long and painful as it could be?
This is such a
prospect.
Catching prospect.
Yeah, a catching prospect. And I will throw to you here really quick in a second here, Jen. I love this question because, and we've talked about this a few times over the last couple weeks, and just how free agency is changing. Free agency is changing because a lot of these big young stars on a lot of these teams are getting locked up before they even go and become available to everybody, right? And we watched Jackson Chirizo sign with the Brewers before he played a major league game. We're watching guys like Julio Rodriguez and Acuna getting locked up first year in, right? So without that infusion of top young talent being available at 28, 29, it really does put a big asterisk next to this topic and this question. So, Jen, I will throw to you here. How would you go about what Juan was just kind of bringing up here?
First of all, I was just taking a quick look at the top 100, and the number of top 100 prospects that Baltimore still has is just
crazy.
It's insane. It's going to be, I think, a long road for any team competing against them. So good for them. And maybe that's worth tanking for. I don't know. It's just putting it out there. This goes back to an earlier thing that was mentioned on the podcast tonight, which is, have the Blue Jays as an organization done a good job of drafting and developing players? Have they done a good job at evaluating players? And I'm not so sure that they have. So I don't know. I don't know what I would want them to do with any of their prospects, in the sense that I don't trust the guys making the decisions. It's a big circular thing here, I think, at every level of this organization, from coaching to scouting to everything else. And that's where I'm at with it. I do think that for a front office that chastised the outgoing GM for selling the farm, they've done a pretty terrible job at restocking it. Yeah. So let's just start there.
Mm-hmm. Joel,
yeah,
you want to carry on?
We got a talented young catcher by the name of Harry Ford that we'll make available to the Blue Jays for, a Vladdy and a bullpen arm.
You keep pitching that, and
I just hope
I do have Ross Atkins' phone number if you would like to pitch it to him yourself.
Call him up. I'll let him know. I'll speak on behalf of the Seattle Mariners. They have no idea who I am. It'll be perfect.
I'll give them a call right after the show.
Joel, enlighten us, my man.
Don't want to do any enlightening. There's players on this team that you have to bring in a new regime, right? You bring in a new regime is going to want to put their footprint on this team. Okay, they're going to want to start off with their own ideas and their own vision of how this team should be winners, right? And you're in this position right now, which is really, really tough. Okay, honestly, it is the most heart-wrenching thing in the world for me, because I love Bo Bichette, okay? I love this kid. I want to watch this kid until he's, a 20-year vet. I want him to watch him go after 3,000 hits. I want him to be on this team forever. When he leaves, a big chunk of my heart is going to get torn out. And I know that that's what's the future holds. It should have been a long-term signing. We should be in the middle of our window. We should be on the ascent, not the decline. All of these things just tear me up inside. But at the same time, you bring in a new front office, they have so much potential to be able to move these amazing players that are on this team to start over and skip a 3-4 year horrible rebuild where you sit at 100 losses for half a decade to get into Baltimore's position. The Kikuchis, the Gosmans, the Bows, the Jansens, the Vladdies, the Turners, all of these players could turn you 7 to 10 top 100 prospects. If you just blew it the hell up, you could bring so much back, and you'd be instantly in that same position as Baltimore. Not in the position where you're winning, but at least you have 7 to 10 prospects to be able to restart. And that, I don't want to do it, right? I don't want to say do it, but that's to look at this team and say, is this the group that's going to win? Is this the management that's going to win, right? And if the answer is no, then that's the route that you kind of have to take. And that gets us back to contention the quickest possible way. And it kills me. It just kills me to even think about it.
I feel very similarly to you, Joel. We are going to have you boys with Blue Jays Today bring us on home here with your thoughts on this. Before I do that, I will say Nick and Adam and I haven't hung out almost at all in our tenure as podcasters, and now we have been together numerous times here. Really glad you boys could join us for Long Toss. I know we've been trying to make this work for, almost 4 years now, but glad you finally popped your Long Toss cherry. I know everyone in the chat has truly enjoyed what you have had to offer. I'm excited. I get to join you guys for your stream tomorrow. Also something that hasn't been done. And then we're together live in person for Baseball Town Thursday Comedy Bar. Tickets available in the comments, everybody. So, Nick, Adam, where do you go from here if you want to just round things off with Juan's topic here?
Well, I mean, I think I've kind of agreed with what everybody has said in the sense of, Joel's absolutely right. The quickest way back to contention, if we are truly going to be, continuing to lose and it's not working, ship everyone off, get them all out of here, cut the payroll to a third of what it is, and get as many prospects as you possibly can. But I also agree with Jen and her sentiment of, well, do we even trust the current management and organization to develop these guys properly? Right? Like, is it, when you look at Baltimore and you look at how many people it is that they've had in that top 100 and continue to have, is that because their scouting is so good and the players that they've got is so good, or is that because they are turning those players into what they are, right? It's this kind of cyclical thing. Is it the chicken or is it the egg? And I don't think the Toronto Blue Jays have either one of those right now. We don't have a chicken and we don't have an egg. So, I mean, I would love to say it's as easy as you go out, you trade all these guys away, you get your top guys, and now it's like, all right, you're going to be the dudes moving forward, and it's all going to pan out. But as we've seen before, all of these prospects are a bunch of mystery boxes. I mean, Nate Pearson was supposed to be the next, coming of
Verlander.
Yeah, right. And look how this guy can't buy an out sometimes. So, I mean, I feel like it's a bunch of everything in the sense where the farm system is incredibly important. But if you don't have the right organization, philosophy, coaching, developmental team to turn those guys into, the ceiling of their potential, it doesn't matter who you have there.
Yeah, I think the Jays need like a messiah to come in, clear everything out of here. This is the direction that we're going. Because right now, like like we're all saying, there's so many problems on. Yeah, you trade for all these prospects, but then are we going to develop them? Are they going to turn out the way we want them to do? I think it's very simple to wrap up this whole show. Blue Jays organizationally have a lot of issues, whether it be scouting, development, players, management, coaching. There's a lot. And you got to start at the top. Start there. Let that bleed through the system. It'll take a long time. It's going to take a long time. But if we're really talking about what we got to do here to save this organization, you got to start there. You got to get rid of the dead root. You got to let it grow. That's it.
Couldn't agree more. Awesome way to end it, guys. Thank you so very much, all of you, for joining. We will go around the horn here, and just so everyone in chat can find you. Let's start with you, Juan. Walk Off Mariners.
Yeah, you can follow us at the Walk Off Mariners. Check us out on YouTube. We're doing some fun things, obviously heavily associated with you guys here on the Blue Jays. We're doing the Baseball Town Live in Seattle, July 6th. So if you're in Vancouver coming down for Blue Jays weekend, or anywhere in Canada coming down for Blue Jays weekend in Seattle, looking for something to do after the day game on Saturday, come check us out. We'll have fun. And obviously we got a couple of MLB guys coming down that have played for both organizations, so that should be fun too. Thank you so much for having me, as always, Scott.
Always a pleasure, my friend. Joel, thank you so much for being here. You are just a mainstay, much like Jen. For those of you in the chat who this is your first time joining us for Long Toss, Jen and Joel are here almost every week and just offer some fresh perspective. Joel, what have you got going on this week, my man?
In the middle of just crazy stuff with the TV show. I think I'm allowed to say this. We got some real interest from Skydance, who is the company that made Air and American Underdog. So that's like a perfect home for this series that I've been working on, and Scott's been working as well. So that's just ideal. Yeah, if you guys, anybody out there wants to know anything about me, you can. Best place to find me is on TikTok. I literally just changed my name in the last like 30 seconds, and that's exactly where you can find me. Hey_call me on TikTok, and always kind of making some baseball content. That's the best place to find me.
Huge shout out to Johnny, who's been producing this show today, and my goodness, it has been seamless. Outside of a brief moment where there was no sound, we got everything up and going. The overlay looks great, Johnny, so thank you very much to you. Jen, always a pleasure. You are just our rock here, and when shouting needs to be done, you are here for us. And I even got your Twitter handle right. It took me a while.
You did. I was going to comment, and I thought, let him have the win.
Let him have the win. Well, you, for everyone in chat who's looking to follow you and your baseball knowledge, where do they find you on X?
They can find me at baseball_Jen. That's Jen with 2 N's. And I still say that I'm on Twitter because to say that I'm on X just sounds really, really strange. You can also find me on Instagram at the same handle.
And finally, last but not least, our boys from Blue Jays today. Really excited to join you guys tomorrow. And thank you so much for joining us for Long Toss. Now that you know what it is, hopefully we can twist your arm and get you back on.
No, it was awesome. Thank you so much for having us. We are both very excited to do the whole baseball town thing this coming Thursday. That should be great as well because City Connect jerseys, right?
Yeah,
literally right there. So we'll know when that happens. But that's gonna be awesome. In terms of like our stuff, obviously on YouTube, you guys can check us out there. All the main platforms, Instagram and Twitter and TikTok and everything like that. Just Blue Jays Today. But no, this has been a real pleasure for both of us.
And on that, we will say goodbye to all you grounds crew members in the chat. Thank you so very much. Hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't. Really appreciate your time, everybody. Every single Sunday, Long Toss from 6 till 8. Join us then. Cheers.